Girl vanished during mall shooting in 1997. 10 years later, her mom makes a shocking discovery. The mall security footage showed her walking away from the mall shooting with someone no one recognized. The Brookhaven Mall was packed. It was November 22nd, 1997, a week before Thanksgiving, and families swarmed the stores for early holiday deals. Lisa Hammond gripped her daughter's hand as they walked past a kiosk selling knockoff designer perfumes. 9-year-old Marissa, in her denim jacket and red scrunchie, craned her neck to watch a man making balloon animals across the food court. Lisa smiled. "Let's grab a pretzel, then we'll check out the toy store." Marissa nodded, eyes still fixed on the balloon man. But just as they turned toward Auntie Anne's, the mall echoed with the sharp, unmistakable pop of gunfire. Panic erupted. Shoppers screamed, scrambling for cover. The pop turned into a barrage. People ducked behind planters, kiosks, and overturned tables. Lisa yanked Marissa down, shielding her with her body as chaos unfolded around them. Another round of gunshots rang out, closer this time. Lisa glanced up. A man in a dark hoodie sprinted past with a handgun. Security guards shouted for people to stay down, but the instructions were lost in the cacophony of shrieks and pounding footsteps. Lisa clutched Marissa's arm tightly. "We have to move." They crawled toward the service corridor that led to the loading docks. Lisa had worked at the mall as a teenager and still remembered the layout. She shoved open a door, pulling Marissa behind her. Inside was darker, quieter, but not for long. Behind them, a scream was cut short by another gunshot. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest as she urged her daughter forward. "Keep moving, baby, don't stop." They reached the back hallway near the toy store, where a crowd of terrified people huddled against the walls. Lisa turned to check if the coast was clear. That's when it happened. A loud crash came from behind them. A door burst open at the other end of the hallway, and 2 masked men with rifles stormed in. Shouting, barking orders, one fired a shot into the ceiling. "Down, all of you, down now." People dropped to the floor. Lisa instinctively pulled Marissa close again, whispering, "Don't move." Suddenly, a security guard rounded the corner and opened fire. The hallway became a war zone. Screams bounced off the walls, bullets chipped away at the tile, and someone knocked into Lisa hard. In the chaos, she lost her grip on Marissa. "Marissa," she cried, lunging forward. But a fleeing man slammed into her, sending her tumbling backward. When she regained her footing, her daughter was gone. She ran up and down the hallway, screaming Marissa's name, but there was no sign of her by the time the police arrived. The shooters had fled through the emergency exits. 3 people were dead, dozens injured. But it wasn't the death toll that haunted Lisa. It was that her daughter had vanished into thin air during the madness. The search began that night. Brookhaven police set up a command center in the mall's parking lot. Officers combed through every inch of the property. Lisa stayed there for days, refusing to go home. "I let go of her hand," she kept repeating. "I let go." Detective Ron Callahan took over the case. He was in his 40s, gruff, no-nonsense, and not the hand-holding type. But he kept Lisa informed, and she clung to every word he gave her. "We've got security footage," he told her 2 days in. "We're reviewing every camera angle. We'll find something." And they did. But what they found raised more questions than answers. In grainy black and white footage from a camera near the west stairwell, a girl matching Marissa's description was seen walking calmly beside an unknown woman wearing a long coat and sunglasses. "She's not being dragged," Callahan said, rewinding the footage. "No one's holding her against her will." Lisa stared at the screen. "That's her. That's Marissa. But I don't know that woman." No one did. The woman's face was partially obscured, and none of the mall employees recognized her. She didn't match any employees, frequent customers, or even known suspects tied to the shooting. She led Marissa away, out a service exit, into the back lot, and vanished. For weeks, the footage was broadcast on every local channel. "Do you recognize this woman?" Headlines read. Tips flooded in. All were dead ends. Lisa's life froze in time. Her marriage fell apart. Her husband, Greg, couldn't cope. He left 6 months later, leaving Lisa alone in a house filled with Marissa's toys and clothes. Her daughter's room stayed untouched. The sheets were never washed. Her toothbrush still sat in the cup on the sink. She attended every vigil, Every press conference, every anniversary memorial, but nothing ever changed. The trail went cold in 2001, 4 years after the shooting. Lisa received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a blurry image of a girl standing on a beach. The child wore a blue sundress. Her face was turned, but the resemblance to Marissa was haunting. There was no note, no explanation. The police analyzed the image and traced it to a beach in Maine. Lisa flew there with Detective Callahan, but the girl in the photo was never found. Another dead end. Still, Lisa clung to the hope that Marissa was alive. The mall shooting was eventually attributed to a botched robbery by a local gang. 2 suspects were arrested. One was killed in a shootout with police. The third was never identified. Authorities never confirmed whether the shooting was connected to the girl's disappearance. 2007, 10 years had passed. Lisa lived alone in a small apartment, working part-time at a bookstore. She barely spoke to anyone. Her life was paused until the day she received another envelope. This one was different. Inside was a flash drive. She plugged it into her old laptop, hands trembling. There was only one file, a video time-stamped from the week before. Lisa pressed play, and what she saw drained the color from her face. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Lisa sat frozen in her chair, staring at the laptop screen as the video played. The footage was grainy, clearly shot with a hidden camera. It looked like it was taken in a small grocery store. Narrow aisles, dusty shelves, low lighting. She watched as a young woman with light brown hair pulled into a low ponytail walked past the end of the aisle. Lisa's heart skipped. It wasn't the angle, the clothes, or even the face that stopped her cold. It was the way the woman walked. A slight inward turn of the left foot. Marissa had always walked like that as a child. Lisa leaned in, eyes wide. The woman turned to speak to someone off screen. Her face came into partial view. Though older, there was no mistaking the shape of her eyes, the nose, the curve of her chin. It was her. Lisa stood abruptly, knocking her chair over. Her hands shook as she replayed the clip. 28 seconds, that's all it was. No audio, no location data, but she was sure. Marissa was alive. She called Detective Callahan immediately. He didn't answer, so she left a message, barely able to speak through her racing thoughts. The next day she drove to the police department with her laptop in a tote bag. Callahan finally met her in the lobby, surprised to see her in person after so many years. He looked older, grayer, slower, but his eyes sharpened as she explained. Inside the conference room, she set up the laptop and hit play. Callahan leaned in, expression tight. "You're sure that's her?" he asked. Lisa nodded. "I'd bet my life." He scrubbed through the footage, studying details. "There's no timestamp, no GPS info. Nothing to go on. Where'd this come from?" "I don't know," Lisa said. "It came in the mail. No note, no return address." He stood, jaw clenched. "Let me take this to the tech team." For the next 2 weeks, Lisa barely slept. She kept her phone close, checked her mail obsessively, and stayed indoors in case someone showed up. She hadn't told anyone else, not even her sister. This was too big. Callahan finally called her back. "Video was shot in New Mexico," he said. "We found a brand of bottled water on the shelf that's only distributed in that region. That narrows it down to a few towns." Lisa was already packing her bags before the call ended. She flew into Albuquerque, rented a car, and drove for hours into the desert. One by one, she visited the towns on the list. Small, dusty places with populations under 2,000. She showed still images from the video to shop owners and gas station attendants. Nobody recognized the girl. On the 4th day, she pulled into a half-empty parking lot outside a rundown market in a town called Angel Flats. It was a forgotten dot on the map, no traffic lights, no chain stores. Inside the store, it smelled of old wood and motor oil. A man in his 60s stood behind the counter, reading a hunting magazine. Lisa approached him, heart-pounding. "Excuse me," she said, pulling a printout from her bag. "Have you seen this girl?" The man looked at it for a long moment. Then his brow furrowed. "I think she comes in every few days," he said. "Buys the same stuff, canned beans, soap, matches." Lisa's hands trembled. "Do you know where she lives?" He shook his head. No idea, but I've seen her walk off toward the canyon. Nobody lives out that way except some survivalists and off-grid folks. Lisa stepped out of the store, her pulse racing. There was a chance, a real one. She parked her rental on the side of the dusty road and started walking. The sun was high, and the dry wind scratched her throat. She followed the dirt path the shopkeeper mentioned, winding through dry brush and craggy rocks. After a mile or so, she spotted a faint trail. She followed it. Half an hour in, she reached a small clearing. A rundown trailer sat in the shade of a large rock formation. A clothesline hung nearby. Smoke curled from a metal chimney. She crouched behind a boulder, watching. The door creaked open, and the woman from the video stepped out. Lisa's breath caught. She watched as the woman checked the line, then walked back inside. It was her. There was no question now. Lisa pulled out her phone and dialed Callahan. I found her. The police arrived an hour later, slowly, carefully, with no sirens. Lisa stayed back as they approached the trailer. They knocked. The woman came to the door, visibly confused, then terrified when they showed her a photo from 1997. Are you Marissa Hammond? One officer asked. She paused. I don't go by that name. She was taken into custody without incident. At the station, Lisa waited in a side room, staring at the mirror where she knew her daughter could see her from the other side. When the door opened, Lisa stood. Marissa walked in slowly. Her hair was longer now, her cheeks thinner, but her eyes, those eyes, were the same. Lisa didn't speak. She didn't want to scare her. Finally, Marissa broke the silence. You're my mom? Lisa nodded, tears in her eyes. The young woman sat down, fidgeting with her hands. They told me someone was looking for me. I never stopped, Lisa whispered. Marissa lowered her head. I don't remember much from before. Just pieces. I didn't know I had a real family out there. Lisa couldn't take it anymore. She reached forward and wrapped her arms around her daughter. Marissa's story unfolded slowly over the next few days. She didn't know the name of the woman who took her from the mall that day, only that she was told her parents were dead and that the world was unsafe. They moved constantly, no schools, no hospitals, just back roads, cabins, and fake names. Lisa sat across from her daughter, stunned. Why didn't you ever try to escape? I didn't know I was missing, Marissa said. I thought this was just life. But something still didn't sit right with Detective Callahan. The woman who had raised Marissa was nowhere to be found. Her trailer was abandoned, but signs suggested she had left in a hurry. And someone had sent that flash drive. Someone wanted Lisa to find her daughter after 10 long years. The question that kept Callahan awake at night was why now? And who else knew the truth? 10 years. After the reunion, Marissa stood by the window, arms folded, watching the street below, as cars passed under the glow of yellow streetlights. She lived in a small apartment above a bookstore in Boise, Idaho now. A quiet life, safe, at least on the surface. But she didn't feel safe. Not since the anonymous letter showed up in her mailbox 3 weeks ago. No name, no return address. Just a single line typed on a plain white sheet of paper. You know that wasn't the end. She hadn't told her mother. Lisa had fought so hard to bring her home, to give her a second chance. But Marissa had questions, deep ones, about the missing years, and the letter made them louder. What really happened after the mall shooting? Who was that woman who took her? Why had she been taught to distrust everyone? And why had her so-called rescuer never been caught? Marissa took the letter to Callahan. He was retired now, but still answered her calls like she was his own daughter. In the back booth of a diner, she slid it across the table to him. He read it, then looked up. You recognize the typing? The font anything familiar? She shook her head. Nothing, but it feels targeted. Callahan leaned back, sipping his coffee. This wasn't random. You've been off the grid. Someone knows exactly who you are and where you are. Marissa stared out the window, eyes tracing the shadowy outlines of parked cars. I think she's still out there. The woman who took you, Marissa nodded. She raised me. I trusted her for years. Then one day she was just gone, like she knew you were closing in. Callahan tapped his fingers on the table. Maybe you're right. Maybe she knew. Or maybe someone warned her. Marissa's brow furrowed. What do you mean? He paused, glanced around, then leaned closer. Back in '07, there was a file that vanished from evidence. A printed photo of the woman who took you, blurred but clear enough, disappeared before it could be analyzed. That doesn't just happen by mistake. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This time, a photo was included, Marissa at age 8, sitting on a cheap motel bed, looking directly at the camera. She had no memory of it being taken. On the back, a handwritten message. You were never supposed to be found. She sat in silence for a long time, her stomach twisting. Someone was watching. Someone had been watching for years. She went back to Angel Flats, the last known place she'd seen the woman who raised her. The trailer was still there, now rusting and sagging, its door hanging off the hinges. She brought a flashlight and a camera. Inside, everything was coated in dust and rat droppings. Cans still lined the shelf. A mattress leaned against the wall, torn and moldy. But in the back closet behind a panel, she found a locked box bolted into the floor. She pried it open with a crowbar. Inside were old passports, 7 of them, all with different names but the same face. The woman who raised her. Also inside was a small revolver, some cash, and a bundle of tiny cassette tapes wrapped in cloth. She took everything. Callahan digitized the tapes. Most were mundane, conversations between the woman and herself, or brief logs of supplies. But one tape stood out. It was labeled Blackburn, March 1997. They played it in silence, secured the girl during chaos. No resistance, small lockdown worked. Contact instructed I keep her silent and mobile for at least 2 years. Rotate identities every 6 months. 0 outside contact, repeat 0. Lisa, who had come to hear the tape, covered her mouth with a trembling hand. Callahan rewound it and played it again. The woman had been working with someone, possibly more than one person. The mall shooting was used as a distraction to kidnap Marissa. It wasn't random, it was planned. Callahan filed an official report with the FBI. He knew better than to wait around for permission, especially now that someone had warned Marissa. Within days, 2 agents showed up at her apartment, Agents Perkins and Bell. They said all the right things, offered protection, promised to find out the truth. But something felt off. Marissa noticed how they avoided eye contact when she mentioned the tapes, how they didn't write anything down, and how Agent Perkins flinched when she mentioned the word Blackburn. Later that night, her front door lock was scratched. Someone had tried to pick it. She didn't sleep at all. She called Callahan and told him everything. He didn't hesitate. You need to get out. Don't use your phone. Don't tell your mom where you're going. Drive. So she did. She packed a bag, grabbed the box from the trailer, and left Boise before dawn. She drove south through Nevada, stopping only at gas stations without cameras, changing clothes in bathrooms, sleeping in rest stops. Callahan directed her to a safe house outside Sacramento, owned by an old cop friend. There they reviewed the box again. One passport caught Callahan's eye. It had a faded embassy stamp from a place called Blackburn Research Group, an obscure private contractor that once worked for government security projects in the 90s before suddenly shutting down. I thought they went under, Callahan muttered. You know them? Marissa asked. I know of them. They did surveillance and information ops. Sketchy stuff. They were investigated years ago, but the files were sealed. Why would they be tied to me? Callahan looked at her for a long moment. I don't think you were just kidnapped. I think you were part of something bigger. Back in Boise, Lisa opened her front door one evening to find a package on the porch. No return address. Inside was a photo. Marissa and Lisa eating ice cream after her return in 2007. A red X was drawn over Lisa's face. Lisa dropped the photo and stumbled back, heart pounding. She called Callahan immediately, but he didn't answer. She then tried Marissa, no signal. She was completely alone. Later that night, someone knocked on the door. Slow, measured, not urgent, just deliberate. Lisa turned off the lights and crouched in the hallway, her heart thudding in her ears. Another knock, then silence. She waited. After 10 minutes, she crept to the window and looked outside. No one was there, but on the front porch, laid gently against the doorframe, was a single object, a spent bullet casing. Meanwhile, Marissa and Callahan drove to an abandoned data center once owned by Blackburn, located in rural Oregon. Callahan had used old police connections to find the site. The place was falling apart, but the basement held a trove of forgotten files locked behind rusted cages. Inside, they found rows of cabinets with folders labeled with first names only. They found one marked Marissa02. Inside were photographs, psychological notes, tracking logs, and behavioral experiments. Callahan flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising. They were monitoring you, testing your responses to isolation, fear, obedience. This wasn't just a kidnapping. Marissa stared at the file in her hands. This was a program, she said softly, and I wasn't the only one. The gravel crunched beneath their boots as Marissa and Callahan walked toward the last building on the old Blackburn property, a single-story structure with a heavy metal door and a long-forgotten keycard reader mounted beside it. Callahan took out a crowbar. You ready? Marissa nodded. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From rage. From the need to finally know what had been done to her. He wedged the bar into the crack and pried hard. The metal groaned, resisting, then finally gave way with a loud snap. Inside, the air was dry and stale. The walls were lined with metal lockers. In the center sat a desk, and behind it, a thick file cabinet still intact. As Callahan forced the drawer open, Marissa began opening lockers. Most were empty. A few had personal items, a child's sweater, a broken toy, faded Polaroids with dates written in the corners. April 1996, June 1997, November 1998. Every photo showed a child, none of them older than 10. Marissa gripped one photo with both hands. It was of her, barely 4 years old, sitting in a white room with a blank expression. She stuffed it in her jacket. Callahan, she said. They had more kids here. He turned with a thick folder in his hand. You need to see this. The folder was labeled, Project Sandglass, Recovered Subjects. Marissa skimmed the contents, dozens of names. File notes, psychological assessments, outcomes, returned, uncooperative, terminated. She froze when she reached a sheet labeled, Name, Marissa Ward Subject ID, SG02 Objective, Obedience Survival Programming Status, Recovered. Observation recommended. Next to it was a signature she didn't recognize, Dr. Allison Klein. She turned to Callahan. Who is she? He stared at the name. I've heard it before. She ran behavior labs for Blackburn before they shut down. Disappeared when the FBI started looking. She's the woman who took me. They gathered the files, loaded them into Callahan's truck, and left the compound behind as a storm rolled in from the west. Thunder rumbled over the hills. As they drove back toward the safe house, Marissa's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. You found what you came for. Don't make the next move, she showed Callahan. We're being watched. Then we leak it, he said, pulling off the highway and driving to a truck stop with a public computer station. They scanned the files, uploaded them to a secure drive, and scheduled it to be released to multiple journalists and law enforcement agencies within 12 hours, unless manually stopped. No more secrets, he said, but when they returned to the safe house, the front door was open. Callahan drew his pistol and signaled Marissa to stay low. They crept inside, room by room. Nothing seemed disturbed, but in the kitchen, on the counter, was a single piece of paper. Written in ink, you have one chance to walk away. Destroy what you found. This is your only warning. No signature, no fingerprints. Marissa turned to him. They won't stop, will they? No, he said, eyes scanning the trees beyond the window. But neither will we. The next morning, a car bomb went off in the parking lot of Callahan's motel. He wasn't inside, but the message was clear. Later that afternoon, Lisa was attacked while walking to her car. A man in a hoodie shoved her against the door and whispered, Your daughter's digging too deep. Before she could scream, he was gone. Marissa didn't wait. She drove back to Boise and moved Lisa to a hotel under a false name. She'd already changed her own number and dumped her phone. It was time to go public. She contacted Monica Vance, a reputable investigative journalist known for exposing deep corruption. Monica listened to everything, reviewed the documents, and confirmed the file's authenticity through retired intelligence contacts. This story is going to explode, she said. But you need to be ready, Marissa nodded. Just get it out. Within 48 hours, Monica's article went live. Exposed the secret children of Blackburn government ties to human experimentation. The reaction was immediate. Media outlets picked it up, protests erupted. The FBI launched a public investigation. Whistleblowers stepped forward. Marissa's photo was everywhere. Her name became a symbol of what had been hidden for decades. But with the light came danger. 2 nights later, someone broke into the hotel room where Lisa was staying. The intruder was stopped by federal agents who had been assigned to protect her, finally taking the threats seriously after public pressure mounted. Callahan met with a former Blackburn security officer who offered a deal. In exchange for protection, he handed over the names of the last remaining operatives still active. At the top of the list, Dr. Allison Klein, believed to be living under an alias in Canada. Marissa and Callahan got the green light to travel with a joint U.S.-Canadian task force. It was coordinated but quiet. They didn't want to tip her off. They arrived in Halifax 3 days later. Klein had been living as Margaret Lorne, working as a behavioral consultant at a private clinic. She was older now, hair gray, eyes sharp behind thin-rimmed glasses. But Marissa recognized her instantly. The task force raided the clinic just after 2 a.m. They found her in the basement, burning documents in a barrel. She looked up as the agents swarmed in. Her face didn't show fear, just calm, like she knew this moment would come. As they cuffed her, she turned to Marissa. "You were always the clever one." Marissa stood frozen, fists clenched. "You stole my life," she whispered. Klein didn't blink. "You were never meant to have it." Back in the U.S., Klein was extradited and charged with conspiracy, abduction, unlawful experimentation, and a list of federal crimes. She didn't fight it. She didn't speak during her trial. The files from Blackburn led to more arrests. More children, now adults, stepped forward with similar stories. Some remembered nothing. Others remembered too much. The program was dismantled piece by piece, its architects dragged into the light. But for Marissa, justice came not from the courts, but from her mother. The morning after Klein was sentenced to life in federal prison, Marissa and Lisa stood at the mall in their hometown. It had reopened years ago, but neither had returned until now. They stood outside the west entrance, where it had all begun in 1997. Lisa reached out and held Marissa's hand. "I never stopped looking for you," she said softly. "I know," Marissa whispered, "and I never stopped trying to find myself." If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also and other to strengthen our community. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.